Welcome back to our channel on this beautiful, crisp day. We have some incredibly explosive updates from the world of Genoa City to share with you, so let us dive right into the heart-pounding drama unfolding on your favorite daytime screen. The atmosphere in Genoa City has grown thick with an impenetrable darkness, a suffocating tension that threatens to consume the legacy of the Newman family entirely. The great Newman dynasty is currently standing on the precipice of an unprecedented existential crisis, battling enemies that operate not in the boardroom, but in the fragile, easily manipulated corridors of the human mind. At the epicenter of this swirling vortex of despair is Nick Newman, a man broken by the relentless weight of his fentanyl addiction and the agonizing pressure of his family's towering expectations. He has sought refuge in a rehabilitation center, desperate to cleanse his soul and reclaim his life, but he is completely oblivious to the fact that his sanctuary has been breached by a lethal predator. The woman he has come to rely on, the seemingly empathetic and understanding Marie Kirkland, is not a fellow victim of circumstance seeking a fresh start, but a meticulously planted operative. She is the biological sister of Matt Clark, a sociopathic mastermind who has orchestrated a psychological assassination plot designed to exploit Nick's emotional vulnerability and push him toward a fatal, irreversible relapse. Nikki Newman, the elegant and fiercely protective matriarch of the Newman Empire, has unearthed this apocalyptic truth, and the burden of this knowledge is slowly tearing her apart from the inside out. Nikki is already fighting a terrifying battle of her own, grappling with severe vision loss that has plunged her world into darkness, and battling the overwhelming temptation to surrender to her historical nemesis, alcohol. The horrifying revelation that Marie is Matt Clark's sister has pushed Nikki to the absolute limits of her physical and emotional endurance. She knows that if she confronts Nick with this devastating reality too abruptly, the sheer magnitude of the betrayal could shatter his fragile sobriety, triggering the very overdose Matt Clark is eagerly hoping for. Nikki is trapped in an agonizing dilemma, isolated by her failing health and her husband Victor's distracting, ruthless machinations in the corporate world. She desperately needs a trusted ally, someone who possesses the investigative brilliance to dismantle Matt's conspiracy and the emotional intelligence to navigate the delicate psychological minefield surrounding her highly vulnerable son. In her darkest, most desperate hour, Nikki casts her gaze across the ocean, reaching out to a man who has long been the moral compass of Genoa City, a legendary hero who has been living in a self-imposed, sorrowful exile. Paul Williams, the esteemed former police chief and private investigator, has been residing in the quiet, sun-drenched seclusion of Portugal, attempting to outrun the relentless ghosts of his tragic past. Paul is a profoundly broken man, his spirit fractured by the devastating, senseless death of his beloved daughter, Heather. The immense grief of losing his child has taken a catastrophic toll on his physical heart, resulting in a severe cardiac event that nearly ended his life and forced him into a quiet retirement. He has spent his days in quiet contemplation along the Portuguese cliffs, nursing his physical and emotional wounds, far removed from the toxic, incestuous corporate wars and criminal conspiracies of his former home. He believed he had permanently closed the chapter on his life as a savior, resigning himself to a peaceful, solitary existence where the shadows of his past could no longer reach him. However, the ringing of a telephone shatters the tranquil peace of his European retreat, bringing a voice from the past that carries the unmistakable tremor of absolute terror. Nikki Newman's desperate plea bridges the vast distance between them, carrying the heavy weight of their decades-long friendship and a shared history of survival against insurmountable odds. She does not mince words, laying bare the terrifying reality of her deteriorating health, her blindness, and the catastrophic danger enveloping her son. Nikki paints a chilling, detailed portrait of Nick's fragile state, describing how the mysterious Marie Kirkland has woven herself into the fabric of his recovery, manipulating his trust with surgical precision. Paul listens with a heavy heart, his seasoned investigative instincts slowly awakening from their dormant state, but it is the mention of the puppeteer pulling the strings that truly sends a jolt of protective adrenaline through his recovering heart. Nikki drops the ultimate bombshell, a revelation specifically designed to pierce through Paul's reluctance and ignite the fierce, protective fire that has always defined his character. She informs him that Matt Clark, the architect of this psychological warfare, has been neutralized by Victor Newman and locked away in a maximum security psychiatric facility awaiting trial. But the true horror lies in Matt's current proximity to someone Paul loves more than life itself. Nikki reveals that Matt is confined in the exact same psychiatric ward as Patty Williams, Paul's deeply disturbed and tragically vulnerable sister. The implications of this proximity are utterly horrifying to the former detective. Matt Clark is a master manipulator, a cruel predator who preys on the mentally fragile, and Patty, with her obsessive, homicidal fixation on Jack Abbott, is the perfect, volatile weapon waiting to be wielded by a madman. A profound, agonizing internal conflict rages within Paul as he processes this catastrophic information, staring out at the crashing waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The quiet peace of his retirement and the fragile state of his physical health are immediately overshadowed by the primal, brotherly instinct to protect his sister from a known monster. He knows the depths of Matt Clark's depravity, the sheer malice that fuels his every calculated action, and the thought of Matt whispering his poisonous rhetoric into Patty's ear is a waking nightmare Paul cannot simply ignore. The suffocating grief over Heather's death transforms into a fierce, unyielding determination to prevent another tragedy from striking his fractured family. Despite the immense risks to his own well-being and his recovering heart, Paul makes the fateful decision to step back into the line of fire. He agrees to Nikki's desperate request, promising to return to Genoa City immediately, but he insists on operating completely under the radar, becoming a ghost moving through the shadows of the town he once swore to protect. Paul's covert arrival in Genoa City is a masterclass in stealth, a testament to his decades of unparalleled experience in law enforcement and underground espionage. He bypasses all the usual channels, actively avoiding the glaring lights of the athletic club and the prying eyes of the local media, slipping into the city limits like a phantom in the night. His first order of business is a clandestine, midnight rendezvous with a frantic Nikki Newman at a highly secure, undisclosed location. The reunion between the two old friends is fraught with immense emotional intensity, a poignant collision of shared trauma, unspoken grief, and desperate hope. Nikki, struggling immensely with her failing vision, relies on the familiar, comforting timbre of Paul's voice as they meticulously map out their covert counteroffensive. They deeply understand that they are navigating a lethal labyrinth of deception, and one wrong move could result in Nick's untimely death or Patty's complete psychological destruction. Operating from his hidden sanctuary, Paul immediately launches a rigorous, forensic investigation into the enigmatic Marie Kirkland, treating her not as a romantic interest, but as a hostile operative. He utilizes his extensive network of underground contacts, calling in old favors to access restricted databases and digital surveillance techniques to peel back the layers of her carefully constructed facade. Paul discovers that Marie's tragic backstory, the compelling narrative she used to ensnare Nick's empathy and trust in rehab, is a complex patchwork of half-truths and blatant fabrications. He digs relentlessly into the mysterious husband she claims to be fleeing from, uncovering a convoluted trail of financial anomalies, offshore accounts, and hidden identities that point directly to a sophisticated criminal enterprise rather than a domestic dispute. Paul's seasoned detective mind pieces together the puzzle, revealing the chilling reality that Marie is highly trained in emotional manipulation, executing a long-term strategy of psychological sabotage. As Paul delves deeper into Marie's hidden life, the full, horrifying scope of Matt Clark's revenge plot comes into agonizing, crystal-clear focus. Paul discovers encrypted communications and untraceable financial transfers that unequivocally link Marie to Matt's lingering criminal network outside the asylum walls. He realizes that Matt had orchestrated this entire scenario long before his disappearance and subsequent institutionalization, proving the sheer depth of his obsession with destroying the Newmans. The sheer malice of the plan leaves Paul breathless. Matt intended to weaponize Nick's own capacity for love, empathy, and trust, turning his sanctuary of healing into an emotional slaughterhouse. Paul meticulously documents every single piece of evidence, building an airtight, irrefutable dossier that will not only expose Marie's true identity to Nick, but also provide the necessary legal leverage to dismantle Matt's lingering influence over the outside world. Simultaneously, Paul turns his investigative prowess toward the maximum security psychiatric facility holding his sister and his greatest enemy. Utilizing covert surveillance methods and bribing insider informants among the hospital staff, Paul monitors the terrifying dynamic unfolding behind the reinforced walls of the asylum. His worst, most paralyzing fears are confirmed as he observes Matt subtly manipulating Patty during their shared recreation times, feeding her dangerous delusions and intentionally stoking the fires of her homicidal obsession with Jack and Diane Abbott. Paul realizes that Matt is not merely passing the time in confinement, he is actively radicalizing Patty, transforming her into a human time bomb designed to inflict maximum collateral damage. The realization that Matt is orchestrating a violent, highly coordinated breakout utilizing Patty's chaotic energy sends a chill down Paul's spine, adding a terrifying ticking clock to his already desperate mission. The psychological and physical toll of this intense covert operation weighs heavily on Paul's recovering heart, causing moments of breathless exhaustion in the dark. Every piece of evidence he uncovers, every glimpse of his sister's manipulated madness on the security feeds, serves as a painful, visceral reminder of the tragedies that have defined his life. He is constantly haunted by the memory of Heather, the brilliant daughter he could not save from her grim fate, and that profound grief fuels a relentless, almost obsessive drive to save Patty and Nick from a similar doom. Paul is operating on pure adrenaline and righteous fury, pushing his physical limitations to the absolute brink, ignoring the warning signs of his fragile health. He is a man reborn in the fires of vengeance and protective love, determined to cleanse Genoa City of the toxic infection that Matt Clark has spread. The heavy burden of being the town's savior has once again fallen upon his weary shoulders, and he embraces it with a grim, unwavering resolve that terrifies even himself. In the safety of the shadows, Nikki and Paul consolidate their devastating findings, preparing to unleash a storm of undeniable truth upon the unsuspecting conspirators. They meticulously plan the exact timing and execution of their exposure, knowing that the revelation must be handled with surgical precision to prevent Nick from spiraling into the fatal relapse that Matt has engineered. They strategize on how to safely extract Nick from Marie's toxic, codependent grasp, while simultaneously neutralizing the imminent threat of Matt and Patty's violent hospital breakout. The tension in their hidden war room is palpable, a suffocating anticipation that hangs heavily in the air as they prepare to dismantle the intricate web of lies that has ensnared their loved ones. Nikki finds a renewed sense of profound strength in Paul's unwavering presence, her blinding fear slowly transforming into a cold, calculating determination to protect her family and destroy Matt Clark at all costs. The stage is now perfectly set for a confrontation of epic, earth-shattering proportions, a violent collision of absolute truth and desperate deception. Paul Williams, the legendary detective who was thought to be retired and broken, is preparing to step out of the shadows and reclaim his rightful mantle as the ultimate protector of Genoa City. His covert return remains a closely guarded secret, a massive tactical advantage that he intends to exploit to its absolute fullest potential before the villains even realize they are being hunted. When the revelation of his presence finally occurs, it will send seismic shockwaves through the criminal underworld and the elite, warring families of the city, shifting the balance of power overnight. Matt Clark, currently reveling in his perceived omnipotence behind bars, is entirely unaware that the architect of his impending downfall is already operating within the city limits, armed with irrefutable evidence and an unyielding thirst for ultimate justice. As the midnight hour approaches, the atmosphere crackles with the terrifying promise of impending devastation and long-awaited retribution. Paul stands in the concealing darkness outside the rehabilitation center, the cool night air biting at his face as his sharp eyes remain fixed on the illuminated window of Nick's room, watching the silhouette of the treacherous Marie Kirkland moving gracefully within. His hand rests heavily on the thick dossier of evidence, the undeniable weapon that will shatter the illusion of love and potentially save a man's life from ruin. Simultaneously, his thoughts drift to the psychiatric ward across town, where a storm of homicidal madness is brewing under Matt Clark's careful direction, threatening to spill out into the streets. The legendary Paul Williams has returned, rising from the ashes of his immense grief to wage a silent, deadly war against the encroaching darkness. The trap is meticulously set, the evidence is entirely secured, and the explosive moment of reckoning is finally at hand. Will Paul's dramatic 11th-hour intervention be enough to pull Nick back from the abyss and prevent his sister from becoming an instrument of mass murder? Or will Matt Clark's insidious psychological poison prove too deeply rooted to ever truly eradicate?